new way. Meanwhile, Freud was thinking he was the perfect kid that's going to take over what he wanted to do. So there was a different agenda here. But his son starts on the 7th house in Leo. He has the first new moon in 1881. Then he has the full moon, and the second new moon was in 1910. 1910, that's the new moon. We were just talking about it. That's the one in the 7th house where he had the impressions of his own thing and his own thinking versus Sigmund Freud's thinking. Now, Sigmund Freud it was a Taurus in the 7th house, but this is a Leo. He's seeing his own thinking. He got starting his impression, and then to build up. Then the opposition was 1926. The full moon came in the next new moon came in 1940, just the beginning of the war. Okay, 1940 is the beginning of the war, and yeah, Freud was dead at that point, and then he only lived up to the next one. I don't think he even got exactly to the next full moon. But yeah, so this is his style, but he just went straight forward up, and he's building up from relationships to the implications and the responsibility of relationships. So the cycle, the therapy and the relating with other people and being able to help people about their problems, that's really the counselor. His whole son was 7th, 8th house, was really that, and to become more prominent in the process. But this new moon happening just in the last 2 years, like, of the relationship to Freud, this is the beginning of him breaking away. So I didn't have his history right here. I just have to go by memory, because I can pull it up. Where do I have it? Oh boy, no, I'm not going to find it right now. So we're just going to talk about. You can look at this. You can see that impression coming in, and then. But from the beginning of meeting Freud, it was moon opposed to midheaven. He was deeply impressed. They talked for hours when they first met, sitting in the IC, and it moved into Gemini, his own interpretation of it, and it moved into 5th house, and it opposed to Mars by 2005, and his instincts are kind of starting to fight it. That's probably when he's still being put down for his religious views by Freud. And then it went into the 6th house, conjuncted Mercury and Venus in 2006-7, so that would really enforce his thinking of what's therapeutic and what's not. Squared Jupiter, the moon squared Jupiter in August of 07 and 1907. There's a struggle with understanding that's between him and Freud, what's right, what's wrong, which way. Then in 2008, it went into Leo. It opposed his ascendant and went into the descendant, and then it conjuncted his natal sun in 1908. So by 1908, he's feeling his confidence in his own way, in his feelings of progressed moon and security came from it. Was being reinforced by his own confidence and his own perception of other people and relationships. He began to see much more clearly about what he was against the contrast of how Freud was seeing things. Then by 1909, the moon conjunct Uranus. Again, it brought in a new excitement and broke away from the past. So he's getting new insights different from Freud. By 1909, it squared the moon. By October, it was squaring the Pluto. And this was the real confrontation. They were probably putting down each other. Then by October, moon was opposing Saturn. And by this time, this is where it just in 2010 was squaring the midheaven. So he had a whole lot of trouble in this time. Now, just in 2008, when it squared his Neptune and then conjuncted his moon, so his sun. So you can see the story. If you put the storyline against it, you can see how this independence was coming up, and how that could have been predicted. He's not a fall. Even though he's in the 7th house sun, he goes off other people's energy. He wasn't staying in something that was restricted, that wasn't accepting where he was going. He had his own confidence enough. Okay. And the one in 1940, when he came up to 1940 to have the new moon eclipse, already there was a full moon eclipse in 26, a new moon eclipse in 40, and a full moon eclipse just before he died. He would have got to the full moon eclipse, but at this new moon eclipse, just before that, Freud died. And Yes, but in the end, he was trying to be, his eighth house, he was trying to be more alone in his tower. He was going in, even though he had his social position, was building a tower and doing things out there to provide for his inner being. Okay, so now we're going to just look at the last one. Look at Sigmund Freud. Yeah. So it's, we followed them along too far to not just finish this properly. So all of these charts, they can be, any of these things we can spend hours on, but we're just looking at it, and it's a little overwhelming. Like, you know so much astrology to get to this level, and still it's overwhelming amount of new information that's available. That's a whole pattern that fits right onto the chart, and you can see that you can get the overview of the life. You have one overview from the sun, you have another one from the moon, and you put them together and you have the basic overview of that person's soul's evolution across a lifetime. So in the time 1913, just after they broke up with Freud, in 1911, 1912, he started the wax. He had the waxing new. He had the new moon phase. So his new moon came after he ended things with Freud, with Jung. But in the meantime, from 1909, the last part, it was the waning crescent phase. He was in the waning crescent phase until 1913. So his relationship to Jung went through. It went really from the full moon phase, the waning full moon, waning gibbous, waning half, waning crescent. Went through that half. Wasn't the full 14 years, but it was about 10 years, 9 or 10 years. And he went through that. So in that time period, when they met, Moon went into Pisces, Moon squared Moon, the Moon conjunct Neptune. He had the dream. He felt that this was the student, this was the person who could believe everything and come in and take up his work and carry it on. He believed that he found his perfect student, his perfect disciple, who would carry things on. By August, it started to be, his moon hit Saturn. He was starting to feel, oh, maybe this is going. As early as 1905, he realized there were some differences and there were some difficulties here. But it hit Jupiter, but he still believed he could understand it, that Jung would learn and adjust to his style and go on it. By 1905, his moon went into Aries, opposed Mars. I think, and by opposed Mars by 1906. But then they're traveling. They start somewhere along here, maybe a little bit later. They were doing things together, having adventures together. Hit the nodes, conjuncted his Venus. Moon went into Taurus in 1907. But then by 1908, this was the beginning of him really being threatened, feeling threatened by Jung's approach, or feeling something was wrong. And this was the Moon conjunct Pluto. Then went to the 7th house, and somewhere in there was probably later. Yeah, okay, so we'll do it later. So then his Moon conjuncted his Sun in 1909, squared the midheaven. So his Sun's in the 8th house. So he had a reinforcement. We're in this partnership, but it was squaring the midheaven. There's struggles with it. And by 1909, his Moon conjunct Uranus, he's starting to think, I got to be a little more different. I got my own thing. He's not. I might have to carry this myself. And then his moon went to Mercury and carried that on. Now, somewhere along here, probably, okay, he's knowing this falling apart. He knows this point that Jung's going his own way and it's not his perfect student, and it's going along. So then the moon went into his 8th house. It conjuncted his moon in 2011. And around this time, in June of 2011, his moon squared Neptune. That's when Jung sent out the letters, a scandalous letter suggesting something, that he had an affair and that the woman had an abortion because she was an affair with a relative that's living in this house. And then it was true. He sent this scandal out and sent this letter out. And at that point, Freud decided that let's end the relationship. It's done. We can't even associate anymore. So by 2012, we had the moon on Saturn. And then it went into Cancer and it brought up the moon Mars. So there's a bit of anger going on. But then by 1913, he had the new moon and he had a fresh new start and he wasn't caught up in that entanglement anymore. So this is just taking the moon phase and the moon aspects. So now when you want to look at the lifetime and you look over this, on a bigger sheet, you can have all three things sitting there. So you have this and you have the main progressed sun going 7th house, 8th house, 9th house. So his sun goes up in the 9th house. Young's only went from the 7th house to the 8th house. His went up into the 9th house. Okay, now, again, it didn't, I did do this in it for 90 years. He didn't live that long, so it cut off somewhere in here in Cancer. So, but his progressed sun, 7th house consultant, he had the life of being a consultant and analyzing people and their problems. 7th house, 8th house, it's perfect. Okay, but his first new moon, he was born just after the new moon. You know, a couple of days after the new moon. So the first new moon wasn't until, I didn't draw the lines in here, till 1883. So he's born at 56, 76, 86. So he's 17. The first new moon came when he was about 17. And then the progressed sun over the next couple of years moved over his moon. The moon moved over that, went forward, moved up to midheaven. So he was moving on his career way, starting at an early age and building things up. That's still in his study years. That's being influenced by a teacher or something. Then it went forward to full moon. It came in 1899, just before he's already established. It's gone in, it's in the 8th house of being the therapist, having the psychotherapy practice, building it up. And it's interesting that it was conjunct moon. This was he became famous by his work on the dreams and establishing working on dreams. But the his sun moved forward. The full moon came further on. His next new moon, he didn't get any eclipses in his life. He was born with it. He only has the 2 new moons. He died, but there was no eclipses during his process. So, but the new moons would have been 1883 and 1913. The 2 big impressions. The one setting himself up from 17 to being the therapist and building up his psychotherapy practice and his analysis of people and his Freudian awareness, and at 1913 realizing I'm on my own, I'm going ahead with this anyways. And in that time period in between, there were things which with the relationship to Young went on there, but he had gone on from it. So by 1913 he was beyond it and going on, but he also had other health problems, other things coming in. But you're starting to see the patterns of how they work. So you see the sun, you have the moon moving around, you have the new moons coming in. And by the 1913, he's knowing he had to end the relationship so he can get on to his own inner impression, because hanging around with Freud, with Jung, was not going to be in his best interest. In fact, he may even felt that he had the perfect student who became a wingnut and would never pass a test to be into the same things. He went into the occult things, went into religious things, and missed the boat. So he continued on, but in the end, Freud was a more established, more well-known, more influential person. Jung has influenced a lot of people in their thinking in this century, but Freud established psychotherapy. And even you go to universities, people will study Freud. Jung is an alternative option that you usually have to study outside of it. You run across a bit of it. Okay. I think that's it for our moon phases. It's been a long class, 3 hours. Okay, so next week we're going to do the angles, the ascendant, the IC, the progression of the angles, and yeah. So thank you very much. See you next week. Okay.